Kate, at 29, you were broke. 39, you're a millionaire. That's just not a money glow up. That's a total life overhaul. So, what was going on at 29 that made you draw the line and decide something's got to change?
Straight into it, Shari. I love it. Yeah, well, I mean, my story just shows that a decade really can make all the difference. So if anybody is listening in their teens, in their 20s, in their 30s, I'm here to show you that, 10 years, you might be in a completely different place. Everything is temporary, especially finances. So yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the reason I started the 30 Phobia project, which is my community and the book I've just published, was really to help other women like me overcome a quarter life crisis or even completely avoid it. I had a full on meltdown at 29 when I realized I was about to turn 30. That milestone birthday was looming, and I was about to turn 30 and I hadn't ticked a single one of my life boxes. I didn't have any money in the bank. I didn't really know where I was going with my career. I was unmarried and unhappily so, living in a damp flat and just really feeling miserable, comparing my life to where other people's lives were, whether they were my peers or people online. So that kind of triggered a complete quarter life crisis, culminating in a very sexy marriage ultimatum I issued to my then boyfriend, which was politely declined. But that hard stop at 30, that was really the turning point in my life where I kind of stopped looking out to society for all the things I should be doing and all the expectations that had been placed on me from an early age and that traditional timeline, and started looking in, started trying to figure out what is the kind of life I want to build, what is the kind of way I want to live. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't look like everybody else is. And actually now sitting here at just turned 40, my life looks completely different to the life I expected at 29. It is so much better. Like you say, my life has taken a lot of exciting twists and turns, and I'm in a much different situation in every part of life, finances and otherwise, than I was 10 years ago. So a decade makes all the difference.
It's funny. Everyone has a different definition for rich, but we don't often talk about the definition for broke, right? And that could mean something different to everyone. What you said you were broke at 29. I'm just curious, what did broke really look like for you?
I mean, it looked like living in my overdraft, always living beyond my means, not being able to, my income couldn't cover, my rent, my bills, any kind of fun time. I was really not even breaking even. So definitely in the red for me was broke, and nothing, kind of no cushion, nothing saved up for a rainy day. I guess like many 20 somethings, I felt financially insecure. I wasn't living in absolute poverty. I was living like many young adults in relative poverty, relative to my peers, maybe relative certainly to previous generations, relative to the financial position my parents and grandparents were in at my same age. And I think that's the state that a lot of young people are in right now as well.
So I was wondering, you mentioned your income couldn't even cover your basic bills. So were you doing a job that you loved and you just were like, well, I'm just not making the money doing it? Were you trying to kind of keep up with your friends and that's why some of the expenses were higher? Like, what was going on during that period of time? Because I think it's very relatable that I'm working, I do a job I love, but my income doesn't match it, or I am making good money and I feel like I should be doing all of these things and having this stuff because I am making good money.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was in a good career. So I had finished university, I had gotten into my dream job. I was working in advertising, in creative agencies, and I love to create. So I did enjoy my career. But yeah, I think the salary wasn't necessarily matching up to the cost of living in London, which is where I was living at the time. So really high rents, really expensive travel. I didn't aspire to do anything particularly glamorous or buy designer handbags or anything like that. It was literally just that, my good job and the salary that it afforded me couldn't really cover my life, let alone a lifestyle. And I think it kind of exposed to me a kind of societal lie that a lot of young women kind of uncover in their mid to late 20s, which is, okay, society's told me that if I work really hard, I get my education, I get into a really good career, and I start moving up the career ladder, that by 30, let's say, I'm probably going to be in a really good financial position. And I think me and a lot of other young people find out you've done all the right things, you followed the traditional track, and you're not even financially secure, let alone financially successful, let alone in a position to put a huge down payment on a house where we all thought we'd be by 30. So I kind of became a bit disillusioned about the corporate world and how that was going to serve me if I continued along that path.
It is frustrating, right? Because you did what you were supposed to do. You followed the rules. You were a good girl. You got your
Mm-hmm.
education. You got a good job. You got your own place. You did everything. So it's like, wait, I did what I was supposed to do. Why isn't it coming back to me? I held up my side of the bargain, but I'm not getting it back. Did you hold resentment? I know you mentioned just, becoming disillusioned with the corporate world, but did you start to become resentful of the things that you did correctly, or what was the mindset shift to go, okay, something's got to change?
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge mindset shift when I had my kind of big quarter life crisis. When I started really challenging where those expectations had come from in the first place. Where did the expectation come from that I would have a certain amount of money in the bank, a certain number of zeros on my paycheck, a certain kind of property to my name by 30? Where did those expectations come from, and how realistic was that? And that's when I really started challenging, whether those things were right for me anyway, those traditional kind of milestones. And if they were, and the future I wanted to build, how would I be able to get there better? And that's when I really, in terms of finances, really started to turn away from being an earner. I realized that, however much money, however much time I was putting into my corporate job, however much business I won for my agency, however many hours I put in, I was always getting the same pay packet. And I started to realize that I was going to have to be a business owner and make that shift from earner to owner in order to kind of flip the script and for the effort I was putting in to be reflected in the money that I was taking out. So that's really also the point at which I started the process of becoming self-employed. So by 32, I had set up my own limited company as a consultant, working not just for one company, but many different clients, many different brands. And within the next year, I had doubled my income and halved the hours that I was working. And that was really a kind of breakthrough for me. I was like, okay, I can live this kind of great life where I have a bit more time. I'm not working 7 days a week and traveling constantly like I was before in my advertising role. And I'm able to afford a lot more things in my life. And then we'll get onto this later, but I went on in the next couple of years to co-found a beauty business with my husband, which was the next layer of being an owner, being a kind of larger business owner, and starting to really tap into that holy grail of passive income and not just kind of hours in, money out, which is the kind of self-employed model. So I've had a lot of different eras in terms of my career and my earning potential. And it was only really that switch from being an earner to being an owner that changed the game for me financially. And that is the difference between my finances at 29 and my finances at 39.
You said something in the beginning that was interesting, that I want to go back to. You said finances are temporary. And it's so easy. Someone in your position, when you were 29 years old and you're kind of on the hamster wheel, right? You're working really hard, but you're earning the same amount of money. The paycheck may not necessarily reflect your effort or what you're producing for your firm. Everyone in your position is getting the same pay no matter what. And so that's very frustrating. And many people just say, well, I guess this is just the way it is. So what do you have to say? Because it's very interesting, and we do get in the trap of, well, this is the way it is. It's always going to be this way. I'm never going to get out of it. What's kind of the wake up call to say to someone that says, well, I guess it is what it is, and this is the way my life's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing is a bit of a stuck state. I think a lot of us, we fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. So I've already given this career or this job, this amount of years and this amount of energy. So I kind of have to keep on going along that line. And I think it's only really the wake up call is tapping into your own kind of feelings. Do you feel satisfied, fulfilled, aligned, like you're really working with purpose, like you're working with balance, whatever it is, it's really about how you feel. if that corporate job and moving up the ladder is really comforting to you, and that regular paycheck every month brings you huge comfort and security, there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody should, tear it all up and start a company. But, if you're feeling increasingly frustrated, held back, underappreciated, any of those negative feelings, that's probably telling you it's time for a change. So really tapping into your feelings and the kind of way that you want to be working and living. And I think, finances are temporary, and even, I think we have this feeling that we can never go back. I think once you start with your first salary and you inevitably, increase up in increments or in jumps, you kind of think, well, I can't stop now because I can't go back. I can't earn less. But I'm here to I'm living proof that you can, go back to zero and still kind of skyrocket your finances, because sometimes short-term financial insecurity is the way to long-term financial security or success. So it isn't always a bad thing to jump off and go and retrain, go back into education, start a company. You can't expect to be earning the same as you were in your corporate job on the first day, but within a couple of years, you might. I mean, with the company we started, we couldn't pay ourselves a salary at all for the first 3 years. So my earnings were zero, which is why I was still consulting on the side to kind of pay the bills and that kind of thing. But by, 3 years later, we sold the company for 150 million. So it's really that short-term financial insecurity and taking that risk paid off in the kind of not even that long term. So I think we need to kind of let go of the myth of you kind of have to keep on moving up and up and up on the same path as well.
In your chapter, So You Don't Have Bank, you address financial insecurity. So what's one limiting belief about money that kept you stuck in your 20s? And what specific financial practice helped you break free?
Oh, I love that one. So I guess I've got I had lots of limiting beliefs about money, and I think, and this particularly affects women that I speak to. Actually, it's the belief that the only way to be financially secure is through cutting back and through saving. I think women are often taught about austerity. Just spend less, just stop, there's awful cliches, just stop buying coffees and you can buy a house. Not true. I think the breakthrough moment is really when you kind of let go of that, it's all about saving, and, actually realize it's all about earning and maximizing your earning potential. And, another, probably true belief I have about myself is, I'm not very good with money. I'm not good, but that means I'm not good at saving money. I'm good at spending money. So if I want to be good at spending money, I'm going to have to earn a huge amount more to finance my spending. So it's not about, for me, cutting back, minimizing myself, reducing my life, because there's only so much you can cut back. There is a limit to how much you can take away from your life. There is no limit to how much you can expand and your future earning potential. So I really would love more women to be on that journey of kind of being expansive, having that kind of growth mindset, and not that kind of reductive cutting back. We already have difficult lives. Why cut out the small joys that, the small things in our life that make it, bearable and enjoyable? So think bigger, not smaller is always my mantra.
I was having a conversation earlier this week, and my guest said, you can't save your way, you can't cut back your way to wealth, right?
Yes.
And really, if you look at what things cost, housing, basic living expenses are so much more expensive today than they were for our parents' generation, for example. But we're being told, and we're expected to have the house, have all of these things, and it's way more expensive for us to do it today, but we're being told, cut back, cut back, cut back. And it's like, I can't cut back anymore. I mean, I'm cut, like I'm back. Like there's nothing else I can cut back. So I think that that's so accurate, that we can't keep just cutting back or saving itty bitty bits. Yes, it does add up over time, but there is still a quality of life element to it. But then it does get to the point of, okay, maybe we just need more earnings to come in, because you were living in London. That is where your job was. So you had to live there. So you were subject to the cost of living that London provided you, right? So you didn't have a choice. So you could find a a cheaper flat, of course, but it already didn't sound very good. You said it was damp and all of that. So, you're already like cutting back. So, okay, if the answer is, well, we got to earn more, where do we go from there? If okay, sit in that a minute, right? It's like, okay, well, that's not the most fun answer. I mean, cutting back also isn't a fun answer, but it's like earning more sounds harder than cutting back, right? So what do we do?
Yeah, and you also, going back to the point you made before that, I think it's really important that we do tell the truth about the current financial situation that young adults are in. It's very different for today's generation of 20 somethings Gen Z than it was even for my generation of millennials, and certainly our boomer parents. It genuinely is much more difficult and more expensive to live for young people than it was 10, 20 years ago. The cost of education has increased massively. The ratio of earnings to the price of a house has skyrocketed. I mean, in some cities in the US, it's like 8 times the average income to buy a house. When our parents were buying it, it was 3 or 4 times the income. Salaries have flatlined. The cost of living is getting more expensive. So a lot of my work is to reassure young people that it's not them. Society is telling young people it's their fault. It is not your fault. You have been dealt a much more difficult set of financial cards than any previous generation. So I want to clear that one up. It is not your fault. You are not alone. Genuinely, it is harder. And in terms of the second point about how you can start to earn more, I think one great bit of news which a lot of Gen Z 20 somethings are cottoning onto is social media. There are a lot of negatives, but there are also some positives, which is it's genuinely democratized talent. And I'm not talking about becoming a content creator. I'm talking about the platforms of social media give us the opportunity to pursue our passions in a public way that can get us noticed. So if you no longer have to wait for a job to come along that pays you the right salary that says copywriter, you can actually just start writing stuff, putting it out there, and keep doing it consistently, and you're going to get noticed. So if you want to write, you can write. If you want to take photos, you take photos. Whatever it is that is your passion and your hobby, something that you really enjoy doing, just do it, just put it out there, and you can actually now, in this current situation, create a career out of it. That is an opportunity that never used to exist. We can connect to anybody in the world in the click of a button via LinkedIn, via TikTok, Instagram, whatever. So there are huge opportunities to develop side hustles, secondary income streams. I mean, most 20 somethings I speak to don't just have one job anymore. They have maybe a salaried job, but they also have other income streams on the side. So I think they're already starting to develop that mindset of kind of spreading your bets. The kind of job for life myth has been a bit busted already. So I think it really is about those side income streams. And one great tip that I heard recently actually is what is your skill area and what is the industry where you can earn the most to do that skill area. So for example, I'm a writer, I love to write, but if I combine my writing skill with let's say local newspapers, I might expect to stay on quite a low salary for life. But if I combine my writing skill with going after an industry where there's a huge amount of money, tech, pharma, whatever it is, if I write for a tech company, I can probably quadruple, 10x my salary. So if you move jobs, it's been proven that you can increase your earnings. So it's not all about becoming a business owner. It's actually about moving into industries where they're going to pay you more for the same skills. And moving often. I think the average quarter lifer move jobs about 9 times in 10 years. It's crazy, but that's not a bad thing. I think it's really the best way to kind of increase your income, isn't it? Just to kind of keep moving up and asking for more money in new jobs and in new sectors.
What is it about turning a specific age, going from 29 to 30, 39 to 40, which we're the same age. I'm going to turn 40 this year. But what is it about, starting a new decade of life that like gets us freaking out? I mean, how different is it turning from 38 to 39 than 39 to 40? Like I'm having my own issues with turning 40. Turning 39 was okay, it was fine. But what is it about the decades that it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't accomplished this, or now we all of a sudden have these things we need to accomplish, or we feel like we should have hit these milestones by this age. What do you think is behind all of that?
Yeah, I mean, you're describing milestone anxiety. So, milestone birthdays, whether that's 20, 30, 40, 50, they kind of trigger us to do this internal life audit where we compare where we're at in life and every different aspect of our life with where we expected to be by this age. And sometimes we haven't realized the extent to which we've internalized that checklist. So, for me, when I was about to turn 30, I hadn't consciously thought about it before, but I was like, oh, by 30, I expected to be married. I expected to have this amount of money. I expected to have this kind of job title. I expected to have a place of my own. I expected to have a car, all these things that I didn't have. And you're kind of comparing your expectations with your lived reality. And when it falls short, we're left feeling like we're failing, flailing, falling behind. So many women I talk to say things like, I'm running out of time. I'm falling behind. Everybody else is, got it all figured out and I haven't. So I completely relate to that feeling. I definitely had it in my 20s, my late 20s. I think, at 30, I started the process of letting go of all of those expectations and ripping up the traditional rule book and writing my own rules for life. And ever since then, milestone birthdays don't bother me. Turning 40 was the best day ever. I just felt like I had a whole fresh new decade to play with. And the reality is those deadlines, they are arbitrary. They are meaningless. So there isn't, like you said, there's no difference between being 40, 41, 42. There is no deadline. There's no deadline on dreams. There is no stopwatch for success. You can find love at any time. You can start a business at any time. You can pivot careers at any time. There really are no deadlines on dreams. So I just want to encourage everybody to let go of those arbitrary deadlines because they don't help you. They hold you back. And letting go of all that pressure actually can unleash you and unlock so much potential and opportunity.
Do you think comparison is one of the main reasons that we have these kind of freak outs about the milestone birthdays? We're just focusing on everyone else and what they have or what they don't have, and we're comparing it. And how do we? It's so hard. It's human nature, right? We're going to compare. We're going to look around, but how can we gut check ourselves and be like, not necessarily their life may not be as perfect as it seems, but kind of giving ourselves a reality check.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I mean, comparison, it all comes down to that. And I think comparison has always existed. We've always looked around at our peers and thought, oh, that one has, more money than me. That one has a better house than me. She's married, I'm not, whatever. But what's happening now is because we're all digital natives and Gen Z were the first generation that were really born on the internet. The comparison now is compared to everybody else in the whole world, not just your small community. And the difficult thing about social media is it showcases the very successful, very aspirational end of things. So it will show us the wealthiest, most beautiful, most successful 1%, and a lot of liars, people who are misrepresenting the truth of their lives and cherry picking the best bits. So we're comparing, our real internal reality, our lived reality, with those kind of overblown, kind of aspirational milestone outcomes, without seeing where that person started from, without seeing the reality of their journey. Without seeing the truth of how their life is now, and without seeing all the other bits that we're forgetting to compare to. So comparison is the thief of joy, and it's getting much bigger. The problem is getting bigger because of social media. It's amplifying what I call the expectation gap, elevating our expectations of life, and highlighting the difference between that and our own lived reality. And all of that space in between is disappointment, disillusionment, frustration, feeling like you're falling behind, feeling like you're failing. And that's the gap I'm hoping to help people close. So I think, given that we've talked about social media, it makes sense to audit your social media, pay attention to any accounts, any people that you're following, any content you're seeing that's making you feel less than, and consider unfollowing. But before you do that, also tap into this feeling of envy and comparison, because often that can be highlighting something that's missing in your life. So don't make that person's success mean something negative about you. Make it highlight what's missing and what direction you want to move in. So for me, on paper, it was a very accomplished individual. I just sold a
I think that's,
company, I'd done pretty well or whatever. But it was when I was looking online and seeing everybody who was publishing books and people who were writing and creating things, and I was feeling those feelings of envy. I was like, okay, this is showing me that this is now the time for a creative project, pursuing this passion project. So it showed me the direction I needed to move in.
I think that's a great point because yes, social media, we're comparing ourselves to everyone, to people we don't even know, we're never going to know, we're never going to meet, don't even live in the same country. And that messes with your head so much. And we don't realize how much of it like just stays in the back of our brains, and like we replay it over and over and taking up real estate in our brains. So I totally agree with doing a social media audit. And even if it's your friends, like, man, she just brags so much about her stuff and this and that, just mute them. They don't know. They won't know the difference, and then if you want to go and like their stuff every so often, so you're still like engaging and they don't think you completely good, do that. But you have to, we watch what we eat, right? Because it's good for us. We exercise because it's good for us. We have to manage every aspect of our lives with a mentality of, is this good for me? And social media is certainly part of that. Because there is some good that social media brings to our lives. I gave up Facebook for Lent. I'm an elder millennial. I'm on Facebook way more than Instagram and TikTok and all of that stuff. And I gave up Facebook for Lent because I was just like, I need a detox from it. And although it was great and I was so much more productive, which is frightening, if you actually think about how many hours of my life have I sat on Facebook just scrolling, but I also felt very disconnected because that's also how I find out about events going on near me, or it is the way I, kind of see what's going on in people's lives and their kids and all. So I did feel disconnected. So I think, cutting it out might not be the best answer, but definitely filtering it and monitoring it and going, yes, I love this person's house, this influencer's house, and she has great style or what have you, but like, does it make me feel less than? Like there has to be a give and take. And I think also what you're saying is when you said go back to yourself, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling the envy, or why is it making me feel insecure? And going back to that and having a gut check, I think is also really powerful.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that we don't often think about with social media is, and somebody said this to me and I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. When, it's a very visual medium. So when it comes to things like money and the things you can get with money, they're showing us all the money that's already been spent. So wealth is silent, but, Instagram, TikTok is loud. So anything you're seeing, any stuff, any material things you're seeing on social media is money that's already gone. So, and that just blew my mind. I was like, well, yeah, you really can't see the money that those people are saving, or, there's been scandals recently with kind of fake wealth influencers where people have been basically overspending beyond their means just to kind of create this, present this kind of aspirational lifestyle that even they can't keep up with. And most influence, this is not social media really, it's social selling. Everybody is selling something on social media. So, bear in mind that if something is hashtag gifted, or if they're promoting for a brand, they haven't bought that themselves. That's not their money they're spending. So I think just have that lens of like, this social media is not real. What the things I'm seeing is, it's not real. It's showing me the outcomes of, having money, but it's not showing me how that person, what steps they took towards having that money, where their start point was. So it's not really telling the whole story. It's showing us the end goal without, the process that person's been on to get towards that end goal. So having those kind of reality checks, like you say, when you're looking at social media as well, is really helpful.
So let's talk now about your path to becoming an exit entrepreneur. What practical advice would you give someone who's like, I'm 30, I'm 40. It's not only too late for me to start something, but it's too late for me to then sell it and exit from it. What advice would you give to someone that says that, or they're just putting up all of these barriers to entry?
Yeah, I mean, it helps to do it with somebody else who's really brave. So I did it together with my husband. Probably without him, I never would have got involved in the world of entrepreneurship. So, that's one thing, don't try and do it alone. Even if you are a sole founder, look for a support network, other people who've been there before, talk to other entrepreneurs, talk to other people who've been on a similar path that you want to go on, and get them to walk you through the steps they've been on, and what it required, and any kind of sacrifices they had to make, or anything you should expect. So I think that's really helpful to have someone else lay out the journey that they went on, and the decisions they made, and the steps, and how long it took, and all those kind of practical things. And I think that we show, there's this kind of myth of the 20-something entrepreneur, right? This kind of Silicon Valley bro who's 22 with a tech startup. Most founders, and almost all the founders of successful businesses, are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So successful entrepreneurs actually tend to be older. It is a myth that it is too late to start. Actually, you're probably better off and more likely to succeed starting a business later in life, because you've got all that work experience that has been done on someone else's time. You've got that maturity. I think we would not have been as successful had we started the company in our 20s, than we were starting it in our early to mid 30s.
That's so true. Getting your feet wet kind of on someone else's dime, right? When you're working for a big company, make your mistakes, learn things, have that experience is so valuable. And if you feel like, well, I'm too old to start, or it's too late for me, all the years of experience you have brought you to this place, to being ready or not ready to start your own adventure or your own financial journey. And don't discount all the years that you've had prior working for someone else, because you've learned something every single day in that experience. So that's so true. On your website, which we're going to link to, you have these mind hacker cards where you can do them with your friends. It's a free resource. Tell me a little bit about these cards and these questions that are asked on them.
Yeah, so at the end of every chapter of my book, I have this set of mind hacker questions, which is like questions you can ask yourself, or you can ask together with a close friend, to help you really figure out your priorities and figure out how to get unstuck in whichever area of life you're kind of getting stuck with. So the mind hacker cards are a set of cards. You just kind of pick them at random, and they're like conversation starters. So usually what I find is young adults have one thing that tends to kind of rise to the top in their priority list, something that's really keeping them awake at night, something they're really concerned about. So, oh, am I ever going to meet my person by 30? Or how am I going to know if I'm getting into the wrong job? Whatever it is, whatever's on your mind, have that scenario in mind, have that goal in mind, and pick a card at random and have that conversation. It'll really help you figure out, hack your way through that mindset. Let go of things that you need to let go of, figure out your priorities, figure out, crucially, if that expectation that you've got in mind is something that you personally want and need, or whether it's somebody else's expectation. So it really will. All the work I do helps people let go of the shoulds. I should be doing this. I should have this by this age. I should be blah, blah, blah. A should is a red flag to me. It says it's someone else's expectation. It's a societal expectation. It's not necessarily my own want, need, and goal, unless I could reframe it as something I need, something I want, and something I plan to go forward with. So those mind hacker cards are a free resource you can download, print out, and just use to start the process of kind of getting unstuck.